All right. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you're here. This is our second session in a series with Engagedly, and today we're digging into a topic that everyone talks about, but very few organizations actually are getting it right, and that's feedback. Because if we're being honest, feedback isn't failing because people don't care about it. It's failing because most organizations treat it like an event, something that's not continuous and not visible and not actually right for the moment. It gets stuck in annual reviews, scattered notes, and one-off conversations. And by the time it shows up, it's actually too late to do anything for the better. So today we're here to talk about what feedback looks like when it's actually working inside real teams with real managers in real time. And a couple quick notes before we jump in. This is a 30-minute session, so we're going to keep it tight. We're going to do a quick 5-minute look at how this can show up from a platform standpoint with Engagedly, and then spend the majority of our time on just really good conversation. This is a live stream, so we invite you to pop your name in, where you're tuning in from, and any other piece of information you'd like to share. And we want this to be interactive. So drop your questions as we go in. We'll pull those throughout the session. We want to engage with you, so don't hold back. And just as a Kickstarter, I'm curious, drop into the chat, where does feedback tend to break down the most for either you personally or your organization right now? And I am really excited today because I have an absolute pro, Kristen Strunk, who's going to lead our conversation today. She brings a strong perspective on responsible, effective, and human feedback, and what that actually looks like in practice beyond just the process. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Kristen. Thanks for taking on as host today.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Marnie. We are excited to talk about feedback, and I know that we can't always say that, right? So as leaders in our organizations, or even as employees in our organizations, the feedback doesn't always feel great. It doesn't always land well. It's not always timely. And it's easy to forget about once we leave the event, like Marnie said, where that specifically happened. And we have Amy Jenkins here with us today to talk through a way that we can help keep that feedback live, right? So I would love for you to put your name into the chat if you have never received good feedback. If you have never received good feedback, go ahead and drop your name into the chat. If you're comfortable telling us the story, that would be great. But I am really excited, Amy, for you to walk us through what might be available and the possibilities that are out there for people who are looking to keep feedback front and center and learn as they continue to move through their workday.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive in. And I hope that list isn't too long of people that have never gotten good feedback, because that'll be sad. That's not a great way to start a Tuesday. But hey, appreciate the honesty, right? Mm-hmm. Kicking off the conversation from Marnie, feedback is a struggle, right? Organizations are challenged by it. And most of us run an annual performance review, and that's the opportunity for your employee to pull up their wins folder and email, right? If everybody could do the raise of hands of how many of their employees do that as a way to try to track feedback. But we do struggle with that real-time feedback and bringing it into conversation and making it actionable. And that's really what we are trying to overcome with the Engagedly platform. So we're going to quickly dive into our real-time feedback module here. But as you can see at Engagedly, we also offer 360. So we have that more formal 360 process where we can get feedback from employees to managers and across the organization. And then, of course, we have our performance suite there as well. But this real-time feedback is really the sweet spot. And one of the things that we have put in place at Engagedly is two ways of getting that feedback. One, you can share it with anybody across the organization, regardless of hierarchy, right? And the other way is to request it. So if you're leading a project, you're wrapping it up and you're going, man, that's my first time leading this, as a team. I really want to know what I did well, and I really want to know what I can do better for next time. You can go ahead and request feedback from people across the organization. So you have that stored and can refer back to it in other conversations, and certainly when it comes time for those annual performance reviews. But another reason we're challenged with feedback is because we don't necessarily have structure to it. And it's not necessarily things that are taught to managers, right? We kind of figure it out on the fly if we're a people leader. So that's another problem we try to solve with Engagedly. We use the SBI framework. situation, behavior, and impact. And the goal of this is to help a manager create feedback and provide feedback in a way that is specific, right? It gets to the heart of what it is that the employee did well or needs to improve upon, but also helps us create an action plan coming off of that, right? How do we continue to highlight a good experience, or how do we improve upon something that we've identified as a challenge? So giving this framework of the situation, behavior, and impact not only creates a stronger conversation, but also creates consistency, right? So if I'm getting feedback from lots of different people across the organization, I know that structure that it flows in, and I kind of know what to do with it once I get it. You also see up at the top, we have our Marissa AI agent incorporated into our feedback mechanism. So if I'm not really sure how I want to frame this conversation, how exactly I want to write the paragraph, I can go in and give a high-level summary of the situation, behavior, and impact, and then the system will generate that response. And then, of course, I can go in and edit that and make sure it comes out in my voice and in my tone. But the real sweet spot here is the fact that once I've shared that feedback, I can add it directly into my meetings module. So I can make sure that as I'm having my next one-on-one with my manager, I can share this feedback I just got from Alex, and we can talk about it. We can talk about why it was, why I contributed really well and get some additional positive feedback from my manager. Or again, if it's an opportunity to improve, my manager and I can have that conversation, and then I can look at different learning capabilities that I might be able to utilize, or different people I can talk to improve upon that specific system. So it's not just about being able to keep the feedback, it's being able to track it in real time, action off it with those conversations, and then store it all in one place. So when we do have that annual performance review, I'm looking at the holistic view of my impact across the organization and not that recency bias of what I've done in the last couple months.
No, I think that that's absolutely critical, right? To have all of those pieces in one place. And sometimes as an employee, we don't always go back to the feedback, right? We have a meeting, we get some feedback. We, as humans also tend to brush aside the good feedback and focus only on feedback that might be what we call, constructive feedback. So this is a great opportunity. And I noticed that Vibe PS has put into the chat, I've had good feedback, but only when it comes from relationship that was rooted in positive intent and collaboration. And so as we're talking about leveraging tools and AI, can you talk to a little bit about how we continue to build the relationship in an environment that might feel like it is disconnected from the person?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, within Engagedly, we are really trying to utilize AI to help support the delivery of the feedback, but allow the leader to focus more time on the human component of the conversation, right? So we're not spending so much time in creating the feedback in a format that works, right? We're trying to keep it really simple so that it can come into that next one-on-one meeting, and the manager can then focus on that conversation and really talk about, how we improve upon it, right? So it's spending the time where it's really most important, which is face-to-face.
Yeah. No, and I think that that's a really important call out, is that the system or the tool is there to support that conversation, not replace the conversation.
100%.
And I think that's probably one of the most important pieces that we're talking about as we continue to talk about how feedback supports people in their growth and in their development. And so we've got another piece in the comment: how does the use of agentic AI improve the feedback? So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about Marissa and AI and that role in improving the delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of hard to demonstrate within the platform outside of actually highlighting a conversation. So I won't show it, but I'll give the example of it. So within our meetings module, we have built a new component with Marissa AI to where she can join your meeting, right? So if she was joining our meeting today, Kristen, she would listen in on the conversation. She'd help create all of the action plan coming off of that, because I think that's something that can get lost in the shuffle a little bit there too, is what exactly did we agree to and commit to based on that conversation we just had and that feedback I was just given. But the really cool part of it is that she'll actually listen to the conversation that the manager is having and how they're leading that conversation and provide feedback, to the manager. So talk about the way that, you addressed a piece of constructive feedback. Did you ask enough questions of the employees? Did you dig in a little bit more deeply and provide some support back and how you can improve upon that as well? So Marissa will actually give you feedback as part of the conversation and help you improve your approach going forward.
And I think that's so important. And sometimes we as leaders believe that we're saying something clearly or believe that we're continuing to have the best conversations, and to have something that can even coach us as we're going through that process is extremely important, just based on the fact that we don't always have someone in the room who is working to help us as we're trying to help someone else. And I think the other thing for me that I found really interesting in thinking about this is kind of that pattern recognition. And if you're not getting feedback delivered with the same words or with the same level of detail, I'm believing that this is something that can help us recognize some of those patterns, even if they might not be clear to us as individuals.
Oh, 100%, right? Like how many times have you gotten you did a great job. Okay, that's good, but what did I do so well that I can make sure I do again, right? So I can get the same result coming out of you. So being able to get some of that feedback about, make sure it's specific, right? Dive into the details, really provide the feedback that the person can action off of. Because I think that that's the second part of, if you've gotten good feedback, you know what to do with it, to either make yourself better or to continue to display those characteristics moving forward.
No, and I think that's so important to call out, especially when we really think about, really about 24% of people right now believe that they are currently working for the worst manager that they've ever had. And I think that call out, and that's just really something that for me, who is in like manager development and leader development, that like hurts my heart. To hear that people have that type of response. And one of the things that we continually hear is that people aren't feeling like they're getting enough feedback, or they're not getting it frequently enough. And so what does kind of pulling this out of that performance process alone add to someone's experience with their manager, do you think?
Oh, it's huge, right? I mean, if you only hear a great job once a year, or if maybe performance is tied to compensation, right? And you're only now finding out that you weren't quite living up to expectations, that's a real gut punch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you should be celebrated all year long, and you should have the opportunity to improve if you're not contributing in the way that your manager would expect you to. So having that constant stream of feedback through Engagedly, and being able to get it from a lot of different people too, right? It's not only the manager's responsibility to provide it, but as an employee, I should also be seeking it out. And so being able to request that feedback from other people, having that then, again, not just in an email inbox somewhere or listening to it in one of our Zoom calls and our conversation, but being able to store that so that when that annual performance review comes up, we have a component where, you have Marissa Insights that will come in, and she'll pull from everything that's happened in your feedback modules and share that highlight. So you can pull that directly into your performance review and make sure that it's highlighted again. But yeah, you have to have that place where you can reference back to the feedback you are or even aren't getting, right? If you're looking in your one-on-ones and you don't have any feedback that you're able to pull in, that's a conversation that as an employee, I can hold my manager accountable to that and say, hey, we haven't talked about this in a while. I think this should be part of our next one-on-one.
Yeah, and being able to ask for the feedback specifically is extremely important. It even allows you to go ahead and take the notes, I think, are really a place where then that can all live instead of the random notebooks or wherever we might have jotted things down. I think that maybe we want to think about how we really dive into working with our managers to help them increase their ability and their comfort, right? I think some of this is also in that discomfort. And I think that is where that structure of situation, behavior, and impact, I think that's where that really comes to life, right? In being able to say, I can be comfortable with a specific structure, and I know then that that structure is being replicated across the organization as well. And people then are getting things consistently. And really, thinking about how we take our leaders from good to great. This is just a comfort, and it's really about developing that muscle and that muscle memory for how we have those conversations in that situation, behavior, and impact that methodology gives people some really great ways of thinking about what they do next, and thinking about how they go ahead and approach that particular feedback. So when you think about what comes next in feedback, where is it that we think that we are moving towards? If you think about the future of feedback and you think about the conversations we're having around AI, is there in your mind just an opportunity where people are going to get automatic feedback, whether they're asking for it or not, or we're going to be bombarded with feedback that we don't know what to do with? What's your vision for that as we continue to move forward?
Yeah, I definitely don't think we should live in a world where you're getting feedback whether you're asking for it or not, right? I think it definitely needs to be intentional every time. Or if you're getting too much of it, it starts to kind of glaze over, right? It's not as meaningful. So that intentionality of feedback, I think, never needs to go away. And the face-to-face component or conversational component of feedback, I think also needs to remain strong. And again, I think if we use AI correctly, we can make it stronger than ever before. The one thing that we're looking at Engagedly is how can we utilize agentic AI to promote opportunities to provide feedback. So if Marissa is in the platform and is utilized within the goals module, for example, and you've just accomplished a goal and you've checked it as complete. Instead of waiting for your next one-on-one conversation, wouldn't it be amazing if Marissa pushes a note to your manager and says, Kristen just completed a goal. You should go in and give her a piece of feedback on how she did it. So there's just ways that we're pushing out the opportunities, I think, to provide feedback using that agentic AI, and even highlighting places where it's not happening, right? So as an HR team looking for trends, maybe there's a department that's absolutely crushing it, and you can look into how they're building culture, right? Because we know culture is a part of crushing it in productivity. So are they creating this amazing sense of feedback? And can we see that based on how they're utilizing feedback within Engagedly? To then take that to another team that's struggling, to highlight some opportunities for them to improve upon it. So it's also being able to analyze kind of data and how people are using the systems and using different components of Engagedly to help drive more feedback coming in without getting stuck in, finding the opportunities. It's going to bring them right to you, surface those.
Well, and I think the other interesting piece and really drives this home a little bit is that flag back to the manager. The manager isn't involved in all conversations. They don't see all the work that's being done. And so that prompt back to the manager is sometimes extremely important, just as kind of that, oh, yeah, I do want to do that because that's how I want to show up as a leader. And so I think the piece that is mentioned here in the comments around using agentic AI to look for trends, but what are some other use cases when it comes to that agentic AI tool? As we talked a little bit about a push notification, but thinking about it holistically, do you have a view towards that, either in the organization space or in the individual space?
Oh gosh, I guess, are you referring to it specifically within feedback or just agentic AI kind of as a whole within an organization?
I think in this era of feedback, in the topic that we're on, where else do you see that coming into play?
I think we also, incorporate a lot of gamification within Engagedly. So utilizing the agentic AI to promote how to encourage the promotion of feedback in that way. I really think it comes back to being able to analyze the ways different people are utilizing feedback and highlighting where we're having success and highlighting where we're having challenges, so that instead of sending out one, massive communication across the organization to say, we struggle at feedback, it's highlighting the specific people that are struggling with feedback and figuring out how do we help them get better, right? So identifying maybe new managers that are coming through as they're promoted into a manager role, agentic AI can push forward feedback trainings, right? And telling them what their role is in giving feedback as part of their job, and helping them, not just understand how to use the tool, but how to have an effective conversation. What does the SBI method mean, and how do they utilize that effectively to make sure that their employees feel recognized for good work and also feel challenged to continue to rise up and do better in different ways across the organization?
Yeah, and we are seeing some love in the chat for that specific use case, and that specific use case also around the prompt to the manager, because as leaders, we all want to do a good job. I mean, that's one of the things we want to do. And sometimes these things either fall off our radar or don't get noticed. And it's not for lack of trying, but it's just for lack of information coming in and things that we might be responsible for. I think that that's also a really great way to be able to ensure that we've got that answer or that next conversation, maybe not the answer. But I also think as we look at this, there is an opportunity even for the employee to see progress then, even maybe a little bit more so if information or feedback was given and then they can see that that feedback evolves over time or it changes. How empowering to know that what they're doing is getting such a prompt response, and go ahead and make sure that they've got that visibility to it, because sometimes once you get the feedback, you don't always know that you might be getting better either.
Absolutely. And if, again, AI can be kind of assessing the trends in your feedback. Maybe you're constantly getting positive feedback about what a great planner and organizer you are. And there's a project management role open in the organization. How amazing would it be to have your name funnel up within the succession planning tool to say, Kristen gets recognized for productivity and communication and great organization skills. Maybe she should be considered for that project management role that's coming in. So there's just so many ways that, again, if you can start to store feedback in a way to where you can manage the trends of it, you can really help to build employees up into their future within the organization.
No, and I think that's such a great high note to really highlight, is that that's really where we're trying to get to, right? We're really trying to get to those employees who are continuing to grow. And one of the ways that we do that is by continuing to make sure that they understand how they're performing and how they're showing up in the organization. So at this point, I'd love to invite Marnie Robbins back into the conversation and ask her if there are any key takeaways that she might have noticed from this conversation that we've had so far.
Well, I mean, this is such a great and valid and timely conversation, in my opinion, especially with the way that AI and agentic AI are helping us with feedback. But what struck me is really around the idea of walking alongside, using technology to walk alongside our team members and the people who report to us, which shifts the role of managers altogether. How often have we thought of feedback as this very top down, and occasionally we'd be like, giving feedback up, but it was very transactional in nature. But by creating these tools to be able to say, yes, this is empowering us as a co-collab between manager and employee to make sure that you are being the best you can be, and according to your motivation, as well as the company's. And I think that's just pretty powerful. Yeah,
I would agree.
Yeah, great. Well, I know we're up at the 5 minutes. Any other questions, feel free to put it in the chat. But Kristen, do you have anything before I close this out?
I really think that the feedback conversation between employees and leaders, as Amy has highlighted, is the very most important part of the development and of the feedback loop, if you will. But if we are able to capture and track and leverage that feedback in the growth of the employee, we've really kind of made leaps and bounds in being able to move the organization as a whole forward. So I think that's one of the key takeaways here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you both for this very powerful conversation. I think the big takeaway is feedback doesn't fail because we lack tools. It fails because we it's not continuous, visible, and reinforced in a way that actually drives behavior. Again, we want to walk alongside our teams, not in front of them. This is one of a part of a bigger conversation that we are having in this series. So if you haven't joined us before, plan on joining us again. In upcoming sessions, we're going to go deeper into areas like performance, development, and how AI is starting to play a role in all of this. So definitely stick with us. May 21st, we're having Meetings of the Minds talking about smarter performance fair reviews with Alex Seiler. June 4th is Building a Bench Before You Need It with Angela Briggs-Page. And June 11th, Alex is returning back for smarter calibration, stronger succession, and performance management. And if you want to keep the conversation going, feel free to connect with us or check out Engagedly for more. Kristen, Amy, thank you both. This was awesome. And thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you in the next session.
Thanks, Marnie. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.